Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Select Advisors Chief Growth Officer interview series. Well, Scott, let me kick things off. One of the things I've realized with working with advisors is they are not necessarily always categorizing their prospects based on personality. They
Mhm.
are really categorizing them based on asset size, based on gender, based on family complexity and situation, but they're missing the boat on a huge component, which is personality of the prospect. I've had situations that, as I was saying at the beginning, that I've seen with advisors, that they're in the 10th meeting with a prospect because that prospect just wants more data on performance. What's been the custodians that they've been using? What's been the situation if you had to look back in 2008 as it pertains to today? So I take it that there's different personality issues here, and I'd love to talk to you about it. So tell me
Well, it's not
about
my
research.
work. I mean, yeah, let's be honest. This is work that's been in public domain for many decades. It's originally called the quadrant theory of personality, and whether you look at DISC or Team or Myers-Briggs or whatever you do, they're all going to, if they're legitimate, they're going to talk about the four personality types. And so I think the key thing to start with is you put a great finger on the issue is it isn't about being obsessed with how you align yourself with other personalities. It's really about, first of all, understanding what your personality is,
Okay, yeah.
um, because you're going to attract people like yourself. And I challenge advisors all the time. Look at your book. Is it not true that the majority of your top 10 are, quite frankly, a lot like you? And the struggles come in when you're dealing with people who you can't really identify the source of the conflict, but it can be as simple as the fact that they're kind of opposite you in the way they make decisions. Just if you just unpack DISC, for example, let's think about DISC, a very well-known personality company. You've got the D standing for dominance, right? And you've got the I for influence, and the S for steadiness, and the C for consciousness. All I'm saying is that there are trigger words that appeal to those people.
Hmm.
And if you're having conflict, it's probably because you're working outside your comfort zone. Now, many successful advisors build their practice on people just like themselves. But more and more, we're seeing advisors saying, how do I cast a wider net? Like, I know I'm an analyzer. Oh, I know I'm a decision maker or I'm a dominant personality, but how do I kind of extend the olive branch to people that might not be like me? And that's where the work comes in. But my whole point, Amy, is this: don't beat yourself up. The reality is, if you're having tension connecting with clients or prospects, it probably has to do with some kind of a personality conflict. Can you get past that? Absolutely. Words help, language helps. But at a core, we're going to typically work with people like ourselves, except where we marry and have our most intimate relationships. We tend to, and I'm not looking for a show of hands here, but we tend to attract people that are polar opposites. They kind of
Interesting.
fill in our deficits. You complete me. I think I could choke up thinking about that, but you complete me is kind of part of that. Except when we get to business, where I think we really struggle to work to find clients outside of our own personality type.
Absolutely. And I would say for those of you watching this and saying, well, I want to work with this guy who's got $100 million, or I want to work with this guy who's got $50 million, and my personality is totally the opposite. There are methods to improve that. Like Scott
Mhm.
mentioned, there are keywords that you should be hitting in your script. So, Scott, what are some of those keywords that one could hit?
Well, we've talked already about the analyzer. You expressed your frustration in
Yeah.
hearing from advisors who struggle with them. I think one of the most important words to use is the word consider. They're very fact based. They're not going to make decisions right there. They will close when they're comfortable closing, not when you're comfortable. But words matter. You talk to the analyzers. Consider is a very important phrase. When you get to the dominant personality, it's you. It's you. They won't, because what's the most popular subject for a dominant personality is themselves. So that's important. When you get to steadiness, it's we. We're going to build a partnership. And then lastly, the influencers, which I happen to be a charter member of. For me, what attracts me is when someone starts by saying, a lot of our clients are doing this. Because I want that, I'm not going to be blind to the herd, but it does help me to know that other people are doing this. So my point is, look, that's a very short tutorial on personalities, but the reality is you can dig very deep in finding ways to connect better with your own personality and also cast a wider net.
Absolutely. And not only are words powerful for different types of personalities, which is why I am always anti having like a regimented script for advisors. Everyone seems to be looking for this one-time silver bullet script. And I always say this is a people to people business. It's not just us, it's them too. So we have to understand what is that person's personality, but definitely being extremely um, engaged in that meeting to fully right away within the first 5 to 10 minutes understand what personality you're dealing with and pivoting accordingly. And these are all things we show and teach in our improv sales coaching program and the different ways of using language. But I also think bringing in, if possible, a second person into that meeting that complements you fully, doesn't supplement you. Supplement meaning the same exact personality as you. That doesn't help. You're just doubling down. And if it's the wrong match, you're actually going to be really annoying that other person. So, for example, if you're two analytical people and you're in front of a friendly person, that's not gonna be a good match. So I always like to bring in someone that complements me, who's maybe the analytical person. So I could turn to them when it becomes very analytical, but I could take over when it's the influencing time, which is the same with me. I think Scott, dominant and influencing match, I guess, of the personality styles. So any other methods, Scott, that you found helpful in a meeting, staging it so that you have the highest chance of moving to the next meeting if you're really looking for personality traits?
Well, that's really interesting you bringing that up about having your staff aware. I meet more independent advisors who, when you actually ask them, so how would you describe your relationship with your assistants or the people that are part of your team? And they begin to tell the story of how, well, I'm not just quite like them exactly, but here's what they do for the team. Why not, to your point, put them in that meeting, particularly if they're a different personality type of yours? Again, what's the purpose? Cast the widest net. Cast the widest net. So I think look, there's a lot of information out there about personalities. And I think the key thing is to recognize it's not your fault if you don't connect with people. You're going to have a natural attraction to people like yourself, but there are simple things you can do around the edges with the words you use, the language. Now, you mentioned at the beginning of this call, Amy, you said, talking to an advisor who just loath to give more information because the analyzer would never come back. And the feeling is, if I give them so much information, I'll never hear from them again. Here's a dirty little secret about analyzers, about people that are very conscientious. They will respond to a deadline. So you can give them all the information they need and say, would it be appropriate for us next Thursday? I don't know if you have time available to go over this and make some decisions or identify next steps. Again, we don't need to fear people just because they're different than us in personality.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that's important is, do you know your own sales personality, right? You
Yeah.
might assume that you're one way with everyday people, but when it comes to sales, there is definitely something called a sales personality. And at Select Advisors, we actually drill down what your sales personality components
Good.
whether you're an influencer, whether you're cause motivated, whether you're really good at negotiating. And you could see where you're high and really be able to assess where you could potentially bring in a teammate to complement you or to improve. But then at the same time, like Scott said, matching that with who you're talking to and who you're dealing with. Because I have a very strong feeling that you'll be able to significantly improve your sales process and results if you're able to connect better with people based on where they are with their personality. Great. So, Scott, let's move over to our second question, which is value add that you're giving to a prospect in today's day and age? As you may assume, given that we do a lot of branding work for financial advisory firms and RIAs and financial teams, we've heard it all, we've seen it all on websites. And one thing that's really hard is for advisors to articulate the benefits of financial planning, something that they've thought was really cutting edge back then. But nowadays, let's face it, there are so many people with CFPs, so many people doing financial planning, not to mention so many people also talking about being a fiduciary, being an RIA, being independent, being a global institution. All of these are overheard and overdone. So in your opinion, Scott, what else is there to really show your value to a prospect beyond what you have to offer within your organization?
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that if I'm talking to a prospect, before I give them a litany of my services, I want to find out what's important to them. What are the top things they want from their investment management portfolio, what they want from their services, because everybody is unique in terms of what they consider personalized, customized services. But I think the answer to your question is yes, investments and investment advice has become commoditized. But I think it's the sequence of how you communicate with clients. You've got to start with them, because you can't really add a lot of appeal to the investment process unless you claim some really unique process that's been validated by research. So you are offering a commodity. There are ways, obviously, to increase the incremental value, but I think it starts with the sequence of when you bring up the intangibles, and I think it's got to come up sooner rather than later in the conversation. So, and I think the other thing that's helpful is I've mentioned this so many times, is case studies, making sure that a prospect who is potentially kicking the tires of your practice, what it'd be like for them to get behind the wheel of that car, and articulating 2 or 3 real life, without mentioning names, case studies, show a prospect how it would be like for them to work with you a year down the road. That's critical. Without putting any money out, no risk. They're just getting a sense based on your case studies of how people have been treated like them in the past.
Absolutely. No, that's really helpful. We've used this analogy before in some of our sales coaching programs, that it's like if you have a car dealership and you want people to come visit it, but people have never seen the car on the road, they've never heard about you, they've never even seen an ad or a sponsorship at a tennis match. Why would they take their precious time and come to visit you in your showroom, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we need, like you said, case studies, other people talking about it, maybe boots on the ground, word on the street, have some ambassadors. But if you can't afford having thousands of people talking about your firm, then at least create some case studies and video content, creating some one pagers to hand out. All of that is really important.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think the other thing we need to be aware of is that we're not in the business of helping rich people get richer. I mean, yes, that happens, but our sweet spot is really helping those people that are affluent, but they need help to get to the next level. And they have issues. And I'm not suggesting we appeal to the fear-based side of things, but we need to point out what we fix. Otherwise, you're just somebody else that can be graded against another advisor for incremental value.
Definitely.
But what do you really do that sets you apart?
Well, thank you so much, Scott, for joining me again, as always. Again, if any of you are having challenges with your prospects or you'd like to move the ball forward faster with your pipeline, please do make sure you reach out to us. Scott and I would be happy to help you through our sales coaching programs. Thank you very much and have a great day.